Several economies around the world are beginning to slip. Russia's economy contracted nearly 5% this year, and the administration is bracing for any type of uprising that is likely to come. And the reason behind that is that many of the cities that are in the state of Russia depend on subsidies that the government can no longer give. And that goes for their business structure. Most of the businesses in many of the regions are beginning to feel the pinch and likely will default on many of their loans. And frankly, most analysts are looking for Russians to really start to feel the pinch at the end of 2015 going into 2016 when their savings begins to dwindle. And reading from Stratford, it says the Kremlin is becoming increasingly concerned that the financial pressures on the regional and municipal governments, as well as the Russian people, will translate into regional defiance or mass protests against the federal government. The Kremlin is less concerned about its popularity since it is enjoying its highest approval ratings in years. Still, its popularity has more to do with Russian nationalism amid Russia's tense standoff with the West. As the economic pressure continues to mount, the Kremlin will eventually see its popularity start to erode. So what the Russian government has decided to do is they're going to take sovereign wealth money or whatever savings that they have and allocate some of that towards subsidies. But certainly that puts a crimp on the government savings as well. And going on with the article, it says the Kremlin has also begun maneuvering against potential political dissent in the more distant future. In June, the federal government moved Russia's 2016 legislative and regional elections from December to September. By setting the elections closer to the summer holidays, the Kremlin is hoping to prevent protests and political campaigns organized by the opposition. So for all you September watchers, there's just one more thing that you can tack on to the September signs. And that brings up something else I want to talk about. I put up a video and I took it back down almost instantaneously because many who were watching it were taking it in the wrong way. And many of the comments were indicating that I had changed directions, that I now were supporting the September signs that were being broadcast by virtually every Bible prophecy teacher in America. Now, certainly that doesn't make it true. And frankly, if I were to be honest, I don't think there's any chance that any of those particular signs will ever amount to anything. I've always looked at it as a bunch of little signs that are connected to the one major sign, that is the blood moon on September 28th. Meaning that none of these little individual signs, such as I could tack this Russian election also to it if I wanted to, because somebody's probably going to attach it as well. But if not for the blood moon tetrads, all of these would probably be null and void. But I want to encourage you to go to Christ in Prophecy, Dr. David Reagan's channel. He just recently did a investigative report on the blood moon tetrads and their history, and frankly did a fine job on breaking down the history of the blood moon tetrads on feast days and how valid they really are. And one point that he did make is that he believes that the reason why so many have grasped onto this blood moon tetrad on feast days sign is because many are just desperately looking for a way to tack anything to the rapture of the church. Now, of course, many would say, well, I don't believe the rapture of the church is going to take place during this time period. I just believe something significant. Well, that's not the way it started out. That's it started out in another way. But I don't, the bottom line is one other thing that he also pointed out was anyone can say after the blood moons that something significant is going to happen in Israel or in the region within a couple of years. Well, that takes no faith or no insight whatsoever, because something significant has happened every couple of years or very, very often in Israel, and I don't expect that to change. But we can't say this right here, that nothing's happened of significance before, because none of the major endorsers of this blood moon tetrad have pointed anything out. So they're all still waiting for something significant to happen after the fact. But if you're really looking for the truth and you really want to know, or a lot of people, I just feel that they want to avoid the truth. They want to latch on to anything they possibly can. But I simply can't do that. If somebody comes up with something like the blood moon tetrads, I want to do the research and I want to find out if there's any significance to it. I mean, I, like anyone else, want to know what the truth is. I'm not looking for a lie. I'm looking for the truth. And if the blood moon tetrads on feast days were of significance, I definitely would be one of the first ones to take hold of it. But you know what? I found out that in the last 10 years, there have been one right after another of different rapture theories that have come up that have just muddied the waters. People have been latching on to extra biblical content over biblical content like the Bible doesn't even exist. I mean, for one, the Bible is clear that when the rapture takes place, that it will be like any other day. People will be giving in marriage, will be getting married and giving in marriage. In other words, that the normal activities of life, normal times will be will be happening, and then all of a sudden the rapture will take place. So if you're looking for some type of catastrophic happening to take place, then the rapture is going to take place. That's not what the Bible says. But that's what I mean by when I say that people are latching on to these extra biblical type of sensational stories over the Bible, or what they're doing is they're connecting a verse that's really never was intended to be prophetic, and if it is prophetic, it's still yet to be brought forth, but they're trying to say it's something that's going to happen before the tribulation period begins. And this is a good example of the blood moons. That's what they're trying to do. They're saying that this blood moon tetrad is the same of Joel 2, of Matthew 24, of Acts 2, and trying to connect it to some situation that will precede the rapture of the church. In other words, as a sign. But the Bible is clear that there are no signs to the rapture of the church. All the signs that we know of in the Bible are signs of the second coming. But since we know that the second coming is 7 years after the start of the tribulation period, you can always look at those signs and try to connect that with when it's possible we can know the season. But my fear is that this is turning into another Mayan calendar, Y2K, Harold Camping rapture prediction, and so on and so forth. And there's others. These are just a few off the top of my mind, but I believe that this is the evangelical Harold Camping prediction, in which there's no biblical truth to it, only extra biblical nonsense. So I just want to let you know that no, I have not changed my mind regarding what's going to happen. I believe that August will pass, September will pass, and we'll go on to October. Now certainly that doesn't mean that I do not believe that the rapture could take place at any moment. I mean, it could take place tomorrow, it could take place while I'm doing this video. But it's not going to come to pass because of any extra biblical sign that somebody has tried to connect the dots with. So I would encourage you to go, like I said, go over to Dr. David Reagan's website and view his video on the blood moon tetrads. Now getting back to what I was saying regarding the economies of the world, China has also allowed the yen to drop. And let me make that correction. Russia's economy shrank 4.6% just in the second quarter. So their economy is spiraling out of control at a very rapid rate. The reason why I bring this up is because I believe that at some point in time this is going to be one of the driving forces that's going to bring Russia and, of course, Persia, which is Iran, and some of their partners down upon Israel. And that's, of course, found in Ezekiel 38 when this attack will take place, in which much of the Islamic world will come. And anytime I bring this up, someone's always going to say, well, the Psalm 83 war has got to take place first. Well, again, this is another one of those things. If you do a little research, there is no such thing as a prophetic Psalm 83 war. Yes, I believe that a Psalm 84 or 83 war scenario will take place. But ever since Israel's been in their land, and this dating back thousands of years, their enemies, their neighbors have always been enemies, and nothing's changed when they came back. That threat has always been there. But it's not because of a Psalm 83 war type of prophecy, as they call it. Now, certainly, if you want to connect that with the Bible and with the end times, you need to go through Zechariah 12:3 or Revelation chapter 6 when the apocalypse takes place, or in in Revelation chapter 19 when the second coming of Christ takes place and the Battle of Armageddon, because in those situations their neighbors do come upon Israel. But I think we're going to find out in the very near future that it's certainly not necessary for Russia or for Iran or for Turkey to invade Israel without the inner ring, as they call it, being destroyed first. I think as time goes on, I think we're going to find out that Syria will still be controlled by Iran. And probably more likely, even more so, once Assad, if he is removed, is taken out of office, that I think you're going to find out that they're still going to have a death grip on Syria and will be able to use that territory as if it's their own. And as I've always said, Ezekiel 38 cannot be accomplished without peace coming to Israel first, and them living safely in their own country. And that can never happen. I don't care how you can destroy every single neighbor that Israel has, but Israel does not consider their neighbors to be enemies. Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and even Hamas are working together to fight against both Iran and also against the Islamic State and a few other terrorist groups. I mean, that's well documented everyday news. In fact, Jordan probably would have been overrun by the Islamic State or some other terrorist group if not for Israel being their protector. So Jordan relies heavily upon Israel for their existence and also for their water supply. So at this point in time, Israel simply does not have a problem with their neighbors. Now, they may be talking out loud as though they're enemies, but behind backwater hiding places, they're simply not talking that way. They're in complete cooperation militarily to overcome the Iranian threat and also the Islamic threat. So at this point in time, I do not see Israel's neighbors attacking Israel even in the near to distant future. But what I'm trying to say is this right here, is that the Ezekiel 38 prophecy cannot come to pass until Israel feels that they are safely living within their own country. And as long as Iran is able to do what they're doing right now and living under the protection of the United States and the P5, under this crazy agreement that they've got with Iran, Israel is going to be in mortal danger. Especially, Israel can't expect that they are going to be safe as long as the Ayatollah is touting a book that he wrote of how to destroy Israel. So somehow, some way, something's going to have to change in order for Israel to feel safe within their own borders, which they do not right now. Under this agreement, they certainly don't. And I can tell you right now, it has absolutely nothing to do with their neighbors. In fact, just the opposite. They're basically forming a coalition that makes them feel safer. That includes their neighbors. And one other thing also that's a problem with the Ezekiel 38 war, and that is that in I believe it's verse 30 or chapter 38, verse 11, I believe it is, where Dedan, which is modern day Saudi Arabia, the Bible specifically says that they protest when Russia and Iran and Turkey gather together on Israel's northern border to attack Israel. Why in the world would a country, according to the Psalm 83 war scenario, who has just had all their land taken from them by Israel and had been routed by Israel, why would they protest? That simply doesn't make any sense. Well, some might say, well, that's Yemen. Dedan is also interpreted as Yemen. Well, Yemen's surely not going to. They're not going to protest because they're basically an ally of Iran, so they're definitely not going to protest that. So I'm not sure where that argument's going for those who try to keep this Psalm 83 war scenario alive. Well, this is getting a little long, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish on this right here. I just read an article. It says Russian warships dock in Iran for war training. Well, this is just one more article that gives validity to Ezekiel 38, where it says that Russia and Iran would in the last days become war partners and would form a military agreement. So if you're looking for signs that we're in the last days, these are the kind of signs you should be looking at, not at some type of CERN reactor or a Jade Helm 15 type of scenario. Those aren't biblical scenarios that the Bible has ever brought to the forefront. That's just brought to the forefront by somebody's great imagination. And one more thing before I sign off, and that is keep your eyes on this Iranian deal that is right now being looked at by Congress until somewhere around September 18th. It's very possible that it may not get passed, and that opens up a whole brand new set of problems. Now, certainly if it doesn't get passed, this could be a foray into the man of sin coming forth and straightening this problem out, because certainly this would be a major problem if it did not pass the U.S. Congress. So that very well may be part of the greatness of the Antichrist when he does come to pass. but certainly the rapture of the church must take place before then. So it will be interesting to see exactly what direction this does ultimately take. And I want to encourage you, if you believe the rapture of the church is near, I want to encourage you to get your lost friends and loved ones a copy of my Tribulation Period Survival Guide. You know, I promote this book all the time because, number one, it is a free book. It tells people how they can know the Lord. It also tells them how they can survive the tribulation period, but the first and foremost thing is that they need to come to the Lord. I also have a paperback version that's about $8. If you have the $8 to spare, I would recommend that you get this book and hand it to your lost loved one. Certainly they'll probably think you're nuts to begin with, but once the rapture takes place, that'll all change. And you, if you don't understand what I'm talking about because you don't know the Lord, you need to come to the Lord today. You know, I just got a phone call from one of my friends that indicated that a friend that I knew I just talked to had passed away. I can tell you right now that 2 days ago when I talked to them, they didn't feel they were going to be dying today. Fortunately, they were Christian, and today they are in heaven. But you know what? If you don't know the Lord, you're going to stand before God. Before that, you're going to end up in an eternal hell, and then you're going to be judged at the last day and ultimately cast into the lake of fire. You know, 150,000 people die every day. The Bible says that the vast majority will end up in that burning hell. Don't let that happen to you. Come to the Lord today as your Savior. Well, this is Terry Malone with the Calvary Prophecy Report.